Welcome to Out of the Noise podcast, a spiritual growth podcast. This podcast is about holding sacred space to help assist humanity to raise their consciousness through connection by having courageous conversations out of the noise of mainstream with heart-centered leaders, wisdom keepers, and divine humans expanding into their authenticity and soul purpose. We will explore spiritual concepts, practices to deepen into your healing and the collective. Priestess Lilly is a medium, light activator, and heart-centered leader that is committed in raising the light frequency and consciousness here on Earth for us all. You can work with her and learn more by visiting www.priestesslily.com. Enjoy your spiritual learnings.
Today, I get to sit with the beautiful Mel again, and I know how many people loved her podcast earlier this year. We actually recorded this podcast probably about a month ago, and it's disappeared into the cosmos, so it wasn't meant to come into life. So I think this is very much about this podcast will be more potent, more direct, and more heart-opening. So welcome, Mel. How are you, gorgeous girl?
First of all, thank you. And I can feel it by looking at your face, but I also feel it energetically being included in the podcast community, that this feels like a nice, soft place to land.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about death magic. I think it's so potent because that is actually what we're experiencing right now en masse, collectively and individually. Amen. So for those that are listening that are automatically going, death magic, that's black magic, has that like no full awareness. I mean, you can't really explain it because it's got so many working elements. But what's your interpretation, Mel?
Thank you for asking it that way, because there are many ways to interpret it. But I like to keep things to start simple and operationalize it. Death magic is simply any form of magic when you commune with the dead, or you can feel and identify the continuous thread of death energy that runs through our lives, and you pull on that thread with specific intention to manifest something. So this may sound unfamiliar on the surface, but I would invite people to check out the idea that all organized religion, so no one's getting attacked in this conversation. All organized religion relies on the fact that human beings are not really sure and very afraid of what happens when we die. So they create a set of ideas and rules around and leverage that sense of, like, if you want to go to a good place, if you want to come back as a better thing, like there's this idea of the birth and rebirth cycle. And so there's ritual and candles, and when we memorialize the dead and we witness the dead. And so it's already here. It's something that we do all the time. I just practice it in another way, but it's something we all have.
I mean, here in New Zealand, our Maori ancestors call it makariki, where they remember the 7 stars and the ancestors. And that is part of the cycle of the ending, but it's also the cycle of remembering, and it's the Maori New Year. So when you look at it and it's a public holiday now that we have embraced in the last 2 years. And so there's been a lot more learning, and even myself have to learn. I would call it from a spiritual, whatever I am, whatever you want to label me, not that I label. The Palladians, it's the Palladian energy. It's the 7 stars, and it appears in our night sky and is visible around July. And so the Maori New Year calendar year happens in, I think it's July. That's when they worship their ancestral, the land, the dead, the cycle. So, that's also out of the religion. There's also, ancestors very much honor this too, the land, the people that have walked before us.
I think that is so beautiful. And it's true. Like, I think when I like to point to organized religion because it's most familiar, but the truth is, like, we've been doing this as human beings. It's an innate part of human nature to memorialize the dead, to consecrate land, to remember. And this is something that you will see in other mammals with some selectivity until we can understand other mammalian behavior well. But like elephants, we know that elephants, glorious creatures that they are, have graveyards that they visit, they memorialize their dead. I love the idea of the ending and a new beginning. That's death magic, is the full moon today. We're recording this on the full moon. That's a great time to practice. What do I want to release so I can start fresh? That's death magic. By the way, if you have a cold and when the cold is done and you're like, oh, thank God the cold is done, that's a form of death magic too. Those bacteria die inside of you so you can move forward again. Like, that's all there.
And I think that's the thing. When it's labeled, death magic, instantly for people that it's the unknown. It's the scary part of life that we don't often have a conversation about. It's our cycles. It's our physical feminine cycle. It's also our moon cycle. It's also the cycle of Mother Nature. So it's very much embedded in part of our everyday living. It's just seen through a different lens.
Correct. And for anybody who's like, oh, I'm not sure, part of the death magic I grew up with that I do not practice currently is a form of voodoo, Afro-Caribbean voodoo called Santeria, in which that is used in a really particular manner. And it's still not about darkness. It's about the practitioner. Every human being has the capacity to bring darkness or light to whatever is naturally evident in the world. So just starting by acknowledging death as its own thing, and then seeing that human beings place inherent value on how that works is a great way to start, to go, oh, right, like we're just spinning stories because we don't totally get how all this works. That makes it easier, I think, to digest.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's easier to not have a deeper understanding and not embrace what could actually be a magical part of your being. You're already doing it. You just need to harness the energy a little bit more or be more attentive.
Exactly. It's happening with or without you. And when you become, I love that, attentive. I'm going to say that from now on. When you become attentive, it just implies that you're becoming conscious and you're relating consciously with that energy, as opposed to unconsciously, which, by the way, we all are relating unconsciously to death energy all the time. So, and I was thinking about this the other day when I was walking through the park and I saw the fall leaves on the ground, and they were brown and crunchy, and I was crunching through them, and I was like, ooh, this is like I'm having a delightful crunch through the bones of the leaves that have fallen to the ground. It was like a little Halloweeny for me, like in a fun way. And I just love that you see it in nature because it makes me feel really safe around death energy as opposed to afraid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that are listening that are curious and wanting to know more about death magic and how to manifest or use it for their highest intention, what would be some of your practices or movement towards it rather than away from it?
Yeah, I love that because I love that question because I do want people to be able to use it for their benefit. One of the easiest ways, like if I make it practical, referring back to the full moon, right? When we talk about using full moon energy to release what no longer serves you, and people are like, how? A great way to start with that is to acknowledge that maybe there are fears that you have, or insecurities, or self-doubts, or old stories that don't serve you. And it's really nice and very assistive to consciously connect with that and say, you know what? I'm going to light this candle, and I no longer need the energy of the story that I once held. And you don't have to make it hostile. It can just be like, I let this energy go. I give it back to the universe. and the universe can take it and recycle it and reuse it, because there is no energy that is lost. We do know that scientifically. And I think that's a really nice way to approach, like, whenever I want to become a new version of myself, whenever I want to develop, whenever I go to therapy and I talk about my issues so I can reconcile the past, so I can create a better future, that's death magic. That's the intention you can bring to it. So then if you want to ceremonialize it, that's when it becomes more intentive, to quote Priestess Lilly, that you add ceremony and ritual, then it becomes more real. And I love that. It's thrilling to me.
I know that for myself, I mean, I practice both ceremonial and individually for myself, or collectively with a group of women, because I think that we as women are going back to our innate knowing, and we're designed as a energetic being together. I do the same. And I think when we're together gathering, when we have powerful women stepping into the potentness of who they are and why they came, the energy can shift very quickly, because women are the manifestors. We are the wisdom keepers. We're being asked to step into our wisdom, which is the cycles of the calendar year, the death magic, our intuition. It's all interconnected.
120% it is. And I love that you make the distinction between for yourself and collectively, because it is happening, and it is manipulated collectively as well. When I talked about organized religion always begins as a set of ideas, and then someone starts to put it together, and then a group of people amass around it, and then it's usually joined by some geopolitical machinery. And then that is how we establish civilization and societies. It's not new.
Yeah, that's why they burned the witches.
It's partially, absolutely. Yeah. Women were incredibly disruptive to those mechanisms. And you had to take away the idea that anyone could have power as an individual operating outside of those systems. So burning the witch became popular because it was a way to just teach people that we were in this society where this is permissible behavior, as a woman, you now know your place or you will die. And that's a very dramatic way to do it, but there are women in our world currently surviving those systems now.
Yeah, and it's true.
Marriages, relationships, home life, that's all still real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've just written this in my book that's coming out. When women start to come into their innate wisdom, we forget actually how powerful we are as beings. And I think collectively, and this is just collectively around the cycle of death magic, we are moving out of the age of the age of Piscean on the 20th of November, which is, it's either the day that this podcast is coming out, and into Aquarius. Aquarius energy is the rise of the divine, the equal, the feminine and the masculine energy working in harmony. It is people stepping into themselves at a higher frequency. Next year is the year of authenticity. And like we were talking about before we started recording this podcast, more and more people are realizing that the system isn't serving them, the outer noise isn't serving their soul. So they're actually going within. And do I see that necessarily a bad thing? Hell no, because it gets us moving energetically a lot quicker. And that is how the death cycle of the system will start to collapse. And the collective is in the death cycle right now. We're being reborn. We're in the birthing canal all at once.
We're covered in the goo. We're getting pushed around from especially in the United States, honey. We're feeling it right.
Yeah, especially you guys. And I mean, I think it's every country right now individually is being called to rebirth into even in New Zealand. We are with our debate right now that's happening about the Treaty of Waitangi, the treaty. So we're very much in the birthing canal and in the death cycle.
envisioning societies that are consciously using what we're talking about, and they look good in my imagination anyways, really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like, I think right now, correct me if I'm wrong, there's so much fear about the what if and the unknown.
Yeah.
And that is also the cycle of death, because we're being called to go into ourselves. Ourselves know why we're here.
Are you familiar with the image of the Taurus, Taurus, for you and your audience, Taurus?
Possibly, but I just haven't, it's not coming through right now.
The reason that image is coming to me is because when Priestess Lilly speaks, I really listen, as we all do. And when she keeps talking about going within, and that is a form of death magic, because in order to know what needs to be excavated, you have to take an internal inventory, folks. Like that's how that's how it works. Spring cleaning of the soul and the spirit, right? But I'm thinking of this Taurus, which essentially represents a black hole and a white hole. We talk a lot about black holes like in science, right? Like it's very interesting. They are interesting, but you never have a black hole without a white hole on the other side of it. And it's an energy donut, is sometimes that's it's referred to. So I'm thinking of when Priestess Lily is saying like, oh, we're going within, I keep getting this image of going inside of myself into the dark to see what's there, and then feeling, and for the audience who can't see me, like I'm bringing my hands together as if I can go inside my own heart, but then I can feel coming out my back the new version that comes forward, the new birth of me. So Lily's like,
OMG, but that's literally from a cosmic spiritual level. We're moving into our higher heart, our soul's gateway. And so our higher heart, we operate, when we feel something, it hits our heart.
yeah,
But it doesn't go right through, and that's it gets stuck because our higher heart, our back chakra, is normally locked and closed.
yes.
And that is why we're being asked to open and allow the energy to flow completely through, rather than get stuck in the energy where someone says something to me and I can't get over it. I'm then getting stuck in the energy because we're not letting things go and allowing them to pass through us. We get stuck in it and hold grudges and, do our fucked up shit, whatever our fucked up shit is around the cycle.
Yes.
And right now, the amount of healings that I have done in the space of the last 6 to 8 months, where I have had to unlock the back of people's heart chakras, where they've had like a lock on it. And, necessarily, sometimes it's not in this lifetime. They've locked the back of their heart chakra. It is in past lifetimes.
Right.
It's what we're really being called to do. Move into our higher heart, our higher frequency, and allow the light just to start to permeate completely through. That was random. I didn't think that was going to come up.
I can see your face. You got so excited when I was explaining the birth through the back. And I want to quote one of my other witch sisters, Emma Fa, where we were talking earlier about this exact phenomenon of like people go through all these courses, people listen to all this self-development work. So they go through it. So to quote her, she was asking her people, you've gone through it. Did you allow the experience to move through you? And for people who hear that are like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm with you, folks. Science. The physiology of your nervous system, that repeat story that Priestess Lily was bringing up, when someone has a conversation with you and you play that shit over and over and over and you can't let it go, that's not them. That's you processing and learning. And if you could learn about your nervous system and go, oh, where is that stuck in me, and learn to move it and learn to ceremonialize it, and then it accelerates the work. What I love about death magic, personally and collectively, is that it accelerates self-development work. Whatever you talk about in therapy, people bring that to me, the way people bring their stuff to Priestess Lily. People come to me as a practicing witch and go, how do I get rid of this? And I go, well, let's create a ceremony, because it's a virtual reality experience in which you are literally playing out the theater of letting it go and then becoming a new you and embodying that. And when you do that, your body doesn't know what's real and what's not real. So if your brain plays the virtual reality experience of that conversation, it keeps your body, you torture your body going through it needlessly, essentially, until you go, wait, I can let this go and I can create a new story. And your body goes with that. Physiology.
And for those that are listening, it's the same, what Mel's explaining, the Canterbury quake, because I know that most of my clients listening, or a percentage of them, will remember the Canterbury quake. It was the massive earthquake here in New Zealand. We all respond to things differently. But say if there's an earthquake right now, we instantly, our nervous system will respond because it remembers where we were, how we were receiving, were we in the Canterbury quake, as an example. So some people will experience that quake and feel the next quake and feel unsafe, and their nervous system is activated and they wonder what the hell is going on, and they're re-triggered back in that trauma because it's a sacred remembering. And some people will be like, right, game on, I'm doing A, B, C, and D. It's that fight or flight instincts. And fight or flight is very much, there's no right or wrong to how you respond, but it's how you take ownership of it and allow your body to pass through it. And that's really what Mel is saying.
Yeah, I love that example. That is something that as an individual, you're going to feel in your bodies. That was a real palpable, intense and traumatic experience for many people. And then collectively, you now have that energetic experience on you. And that isn't woo-woo. That's real. That's measurable. We have that in our bodies. And for people who come to this work, they have the opportunity to gain the lessons that come from traumatic experience and gain the wisdom and move forward lighter without carrying the heavy trauma. That is amazing.
And I really want to say what a bigger context, individually we are experiencing death magic as an individual. We are also experiencing it as as our collective family or friends groups right now. Many people are letting go of people that maybe aren't on the same timeline or frequency as them within their family or friend group. So that naturally has an element of death magic and grief. Absolutely. And letting go. Relationships, marriages, jobs, we're experiencing it within ourselves, but also within our family, our immediate groups. We're also experiencing it massively as a collective, whether you want to take ownership of it or not. We actually are. When you look at just the wars that are happening right now on the planet, bless those people that are experiencing that. That also is biblical wars. That is the cycle of old trauma coming up, wanting to be rehealed or revisited at the cost of the human experience. That is also death magic on so many different, just not one layer, multiple layers of collective consciousness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a great example of how these elements and these energies are used with or without your permission as an individual, how other people will use it, how groups of people will use it. The control. And also remembering that for anybody who's afraid, because it's okay and it's normal to be afraid of death. We've been taught to be afraid. We've been taught. And what I love about the way I grew up was that death was so normalized that I go to her in meditation for guidance. I go to her for comfort. I ask, what do I need to know? What's the next step? That is odd to people. And there are people who say, oh no, you're inviting death into your life, or you invite bad things to happen. And what I want to say to that is that death is way bigger than any flippant wish I could make in my mind about that is not true. You are not inviting tragedy into your life just because you accept reality. That's all.
Yeah. It's the same when I do readings and the death card comes out in a tarot reading. People freak out. And they're like, oh no. And I go, well, it's the ending of a cycle. It's the ending of a space or a place or a knowing, or it doesn't mean it's the like a soul passing away. And when you mentioned about the death cycle, when people, I think collectively since COVID, we have been given an opportunity to literally embrace death differently. So obviously here, when we had COVID, we weren't allowed big funerals necessarily, and there was only, small gatherings of people. I think there was an opportunity to people to really collectively grieve within their family units and offer that space of things being differently, a bigger ideal than what, it has to be a big public affair.
Yeah, I do too. I think when you bring that up, all I can think about is the women who also birthed on their own during COVID.
Absolutely.
And how that cycle was there for them, where they had to go through something so natural, but monumentous and traumatic in a way, because they're a new person.
Yeah.
You're a mother. I am not. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That is an experience in which you kind of move into a whole, not kind of, you become a new person, you yourself as you birth. And so it's an incredible experience. And COVID taught us a lot about the death and rebirth cycle.
Absolutely. I know that for myself, COVID taught me a lot. I think initially there was a resistance to go indoors, a resistance for me to be. COVID was this opportunity that initially I resisted.
Sure.
Going inside, going into my coven space, because I was on the do. I was, too busy doing life rather than being present in life. That the reality was, the woman that came out of that first, I think it was a 6 or 8 week lockdown here in New Zealand, totally different person.
Oh yeah.
I unwound my nervous system like you wouldn't believe.
We had an opportunity to cocoon. I said it to everybody around me when New York City shut down. I said, I'm gonna use this as a cocoon to come out a new version of myself. And I love when you're like owning your human shit, because it's so nice to hear when you're so connected to your spirit and the light that you carry, and you're like, I too was resistant, and I'm like, wow, all of us all the time. Me too, by the way, folks. I'm a death witch, and I will be like, I don't fuck, the therapist brought up something that I have to deal with. I don't want to look. And there's always this resistance you have to move past. But if you can get past that faster and learn how to use resistance as a beacon of where to go exactly next, and identify whatever feels frightening as like, oh, that's where I'm going next to grow. Then you start to really accelerate a lot of that.
I love that you've brought that up. For me, when I meditate and spirit tells me something individually and I go, yeah, nah, not feeling that. And then carry on life, just do the world, do the motions, do life. And then the same cycle keeps coming up. That's when I know, I go, why is my human self, my human experience resisting this change?
Amen. Yeah.
Ooh. And that's where I know that cycle of light and dark, death and rebirth, I know that for myself, I'm continually in that cycle, because we didn't come here to wait for an ending. We came here spiritually to evolve. We
Amen.
came here spiritually to grow. And part of that growth and evolvement is death and rebirth.
And you're in it all the time. And what I want people to hear about that and really become conscious of it, because exactly what Priestess Lilly just said, you're doing it anyways. You're either doing the death work to eliminate challenges that keep you from living the life you want and being who you want, or you go within and you kill off what, in order to stay stuck in something. If you're like, I have a truth in me I'm not ready to accept, that's that is also an individual timeline. Not everybody lives in a society or a family or a place that's safe. But I always say, do the work to know yourself internally so that even when you're alone, when you're looking in the mirror, you don't have to say it out loud, but you look in your own eyes and you know the flame of your own truth. And then someday, if it is safe, and someday when you get to move forward, don't do the work unconsciously internally just to kill off everything within you that speaks loudly, frightening. It's going to happen either way. So that's the gift I want people to give themselves.
So those that are listening that are wanting to know more, wanting to experience more, what would you invite to say to those people?
Take a look at what death means to you as an individual and start to question, do the academic stuff. I like the academic stuff because it's like intellectual and it's safe. It's theoretical. Start examining where your preconceptions of death came from. Preconceptions, because we're all born and then trained. This is all of us. Like, so where does that come from for you? And when you start investigating it that way, then it becomes interesting.
Yeah. So I love that you shared that. So a few, not actually sure, 2022 maybe, 2020, not 100% sure. I trained to be a death doula to help people transition over into another realm. I think that it is a privilege, absolute privilege to be part of that cycle, that ceremonial ritual for someone, and allow them the space to heal into their death. And I've supported families in that, collective families in that, of a passing of someone, you know, in hospice, or individuals healing into their own personal death that have had illness. I invite people really that are scared of that process, like what you just said, to really feel into it. I think there's so much magic when you really open your heart to experience not only it as a fear, but to experience it for the love and the light that it truly, and the magical offering that it really is.
I agree. And I agree.
So Mel, how do people find you, gorgeous girl?
Like, I agree. They can find me on the gram. I can leave those links. And if it's okay to do some shameless self-promoting, I have a 2-hour death magic workshop that was really well received a while ago, and that recording is still available for purchase. I can leave the link for Lily there. And in the 2 hours of that death magic workshop, there is historical analysis of what death looks like throughout history and to different people. There is an analysis of death energy in our lives and in our own bodies and perceptions of death. And then there's a practice that we walk through about how to meet death. I have these lovely graphics, and I show you how to construct a ritual where you can safely meet death face to face. And I have a student who went through this program. And what I love about this is that people, when they give you feedback, they tell you stuff that you're like, I would never have thought of that. I'm like, damn, like people be getting wisdom. And one of my students who's very conscious of her death, and her name is Alice. She wouldn't mind me telling you that. And she's in her 80s. She did this death work because she's preparing. She's like, I want to prepare for a nice out. And I love that. And she told me she did the ritual after doing the course or the 2-hour workshop. And she said that when she met death, she met herself. She said, and how could I be afraid of me? I'm my own best friend. And that's like where I'm headed now. That set a whole new bar for me personally. Go, Alice. And so if anybody wants a safe introductory way to do that kind of work, that's a really great place to start. And it's $30 American bucks. So however that gets converted, it's not very pricey. I wanted it to be really accessible because I think if people could do this work, they would be more secure and at ease in themselves, healthier.
I love, love, love. I love your work. I love you. I love you that we can have these courageous, courageous conversations.
Yes.
And hear each other and love each other for difference of opinion, our different way of being, whatever. I just feel that there's so much richness in these conversations with you that opens up people's minds, hearts, souls to receiving. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming again on my podcast. I know that the last podcast that you and I did had so many downloads and so much interaction that the women that listen, women and men, I've been told that, Lily, you need to start acknowledging the men.
Let's acknowledge the men here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you, men.
I know that they receive so much. So thank you. Thank you for doing your work and bringing your work as a witch out of the shadows and into the light, because I think that's what's going to heal the collective consciousness, is more people like you and I walking our truth and walking our truth.
Yes. The world will be a better place when people are in their truth, when it's safe for everyone to be in their truth. So demonstrate that. And thank you. Thank you for your time and for your light. And thank you for the listeners. I'm always so grateful for whatever people will absorb in their own lives. And I hope to be back because I got some more shit to share.
You'll be back, girl. You'll be back. Love, love, love. Thank you, gorgeous.
Thank you.